Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher, and this is Sweetwater's iOS update.
Woo!
This time on the update, I've got a DJ remix app for you and a great addition for your musician's toolbox.
Woo!
Let's get started. You may be familiar with Novation's Launchpad hardware controller. Now this interfaces with Ableton Live software and allows you to trigger samples, to trigger clips, to do looping things, control parameters, all from this hardware base. Well, Novation has just released a free version of this that runs on your iPad. The Launchpad app for Novation is totally free, and it consists of 8 rows and 8 columns of pads into which you can load samples and loops. So you can trigger these loops by simply touching on a pad. Then you can layer other loops on top. As you move down the column, you change to different loops or samples. The Launchpad app keeps everything in perfect sync as you're triggering. You can also trigger an entire row by swiping across. Then on top of that, you can layer single-shot samples if you like.
Take me higher. Take me higher.
Now we also have effects that can be applied to the loops and samples. So if we get a loop going here, we've got a filter that can be independently applied to each loop by simply moving the slider. We've also got a volume control for each column. And we've got master effects that are applied to the overall mix. So we've got a filter, and that can be run at different rhythmic values. We also have a re-trigger or a stutter effect. And we can combine the two together. Now we have control over both the samples and the trigger style for each pad. So if we set it to sample here, we can see what's in each pad at this point. We've got a drum loop here and the name of the drum loop below it. If we hold the edit button down and touch one of the pads, we open up our sample library, and from there you can choose whatever you want to apply to that particular pad. Now at this point, we've got that loop loaded in there. We can also load in single-shot samples. We can load in different instruments as well. The second parameter we can adjust for each pad is the trigger style. Now there are 3 modes for this. First of all, there's one-shot mode where you hit a sample and it just plays through once.
Woo!
There also are 2 looping modes that affect when a sample changes when you hit a new pad. Most of the things default to a 4-beat loop, so if we're playing a loop and we hit another pad, it'll wait to the beginning of the next measure to trigger that new pad. You can also set it up so it waits till the next beat if you want to have things change quicker. If you're a Novation Launchpad hardware user, you're going to feel right at home with the Novation Launchpad app because it does a lot of the same things that the Launchpad does in conjunction with Ableton Live, yet of course it runs on your iPad. If you're new to the Launchpad, I think you're going to find this a great way to do remixes, to create DJ sets, to use live on stage, in the studio. It's a versatile app that lets you create a lot of music very quickly, very easily. Two essential things to have in your musician's toolbox are a metronome and a tuner. Now we've looked at various apps in the past that give you each of those, but the app we have today for your musician's toolbox is Subdivide, which combines both into one iOS app. So the top half of the screen in Subdivide is a strobe tuner. You can turn that on and off. You can set it to the key that you're working in, so you can choose whatever that is. If you're working in a transposing instrument like trumpet or alto sax, you have settings for that. So it's very easy to dial that up. Key of C, of course, works for piano, flute, guitar, those types of instruments. The bottom half of the screen is where the metronome part of the app lives. And the cool thing about this metronome, what I really like about it, is the way that you can subdivide the beat into different rhythmic divisions. So we've got 6 sliders here where we can dial up the level of different rhythmic subdivisions. We also can set the meter anything from 1 beat per measure all the way up to different subdivisions of 3 versus 2, 3 plus 4, 4 plus 3, 5 plus 4. So you can get into complex time signatures if you like as well. Let's go back to 4/4 time. We'll start it up here. The first slider controls the whole note subdivision. We can also dial up the quarter note. We can bring in an 8th note. We can bring that back down. We can bring in a 16th note after a 16th rest. Bring that back down. We can bring up a triplet. We can also change that so that the triplet only plays on the first and last part of the triplet. And our last slider brings up different clave rhythms, rumbas, bossa nova, The cool thing is that we can use these sliders as a mixer to get very complex rhythmic subdivisions. Now, of course, we have control over the tempo. We can tap in the tempo we want. We can use the slider, or we can step up one at a time. Now, once you have a rhythmic subdivision set up the way that you want it, you can store that as a preset and then recall it later whenever you like. Subdivide is a very powerful metronome and tuning app for your iOS device. This is a great addition to your musician's toolbox. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of Sweetwater's iOS update. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll have more apps, hardware, and tech tips on making music with your iOS devices. I'm Mitch Gallagher.